What's up? Welcome to Political Punks. I'm your host, Brett R. Smith. Let's welcome our guests. First up is retired U.S. Army Special Forces Green Beret, defender of the faith, senior canine companion and rescuer, frequent guest on the Greg Gutfeld Show, and host of Hollywood Weapons on the Outdoor Channel. And truly the last action hero, Mr. Terry Schappert.
Last because I'm old. Thank you very much.
Exactly. It's not the age, it's the mileage. You know what I mean?
It's the mileage, honey. That's absolutely true.
Next up, he's the content manager for Bongino Report, a New York Times and Amazon bestseller. He has books out like Debunk This, Spygate, and his new book, Dumb and Dumber, How Cuomo and de Blasio Ruined New York. He and I also hang on every word of Dr. Michael J. Burry's Twitter feed, Mr. Matt Palumbo. And last but not least, she was the director of CPAC from 2006 to 2011, known widely as the good years of CPAC, and also invited Trump to headline the event in 2011. So she might be responsible for the last 4 years. She's the author of she's also the author of the Social Justice Warrior Handbook, which I encourage everyone to pick up. It's
brilliant.
Lisa D. Pasquale. All right, so I want to kick this off with some GameStop. We had this little revolution in stocks. The plebes decided to screw the hedge funders and put them into what's called a short squeeze. The plebes, the Redditors, they love GameStop. GameStop wasn't much to me because I'm a little bit older, but for a lot of people, GameStop's like something to do after church with your kids. And you go to a brick and mortar store and you buy your kids or you buy yourself an actual video game and go home and play it. And people like shopping there. The hedge funders decided this isn't something that's worth keeping around because it's brick and mortar. And I don't know, we think it's lame. So we're going to short this thing. We're going to try and destroy it. The Redditors jumped in and bought all this stock and largely saved, I think, the company for now. But these hedge funders basically thought they were going to wake up to a $4 share and ended up with I think it's like $400 a share. Yep. So anyway, what do we think about this? I think it's fantastic, and I have to disclose this. My brother is an ex-hedge funder. He recently got out, but he has been a hedge funder for the last, I don't know, maybe 15 years.
Well, I'm very lucky. I was actually short GameStop a year and a half ago, and then Michael Burry bought in. So I realized, my thesis must be wrong. And obviously, thank God I got out, or else I would be bankrupted by now. I don't know. It's a very fun story. I mean, the whole narrative that it's sticking it to Wall Street isn't entirely accurate. You're sticking it to maybe 2 or 3 hedge funds. But that being said, it's still a hysterical story, and it does show that the average person has way more weight in these markets than we thought. And how is this going to end? I have no idea. I don't know. I feel like my whole finance degree was a waste. One of the first things I learned is that markets are efficient and they take into account all forms of public information. And it turns out you can move the value of GameStop from $200 million to $30 billion in a week. So that was wrong. What I learned, I guess. Yeah,
basically. you got another education that kind of superseded your old education, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot about this stuff. I don't, I just have a money market account that I plug money into, and I don't buy or trade stocks. So this was an education for me. I learned a lot, actually. I didn't know what a short squeeze was. I didn't know about anything.
Would it benefit for me to explain? I just feel like after all the money I spent on that degree, if I could explain what a short squeeze is, maybe it wasn't all for nothing. The money.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I learned more with the Big Short about stocks without moving than I did all through economics class.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And people will learn more through Matt here probably than their economics.
Well, I was going to say, or trading places.
Right.
Yeah. And ironically, Michael Burry from the movie The Big Short made a larger return on GameStop than he did shorting the housing market. So maybe there'll be a sequel on that. But, I mean, the reason this worked is what a short sale is. Everyone knows it's betting against a stock, but most people don't know the process by which. So just to give an example that doesn't include a stock certificate, if you own a new, Xbox or PlayStation, you bought it for $500, and I thought maybe it's only worth $200, but currently it's selling for $500. I would borrow it from you and pay you interest on it, on that loan. Then I would sell the Xbox to someone else for $500. I would hope the price actually does go down, and then I would buy it back, let's say for $300. I would give you the Xbox back, so that would close out that liability, and then I would pocket the difference of $300. what happened here is there was such a massive amount of shares short that when people started pumping up the price, there were a lot of people who didn't have enough money in their brokerage accounts to cover the short. So their brokerages would literally force them to buy the stock back at any price. And then that, of course, pushes the share up more, which forces more people to get, it's called getting margin called, and then it forces them to buy back and so on and so forth, and it just skyrockets to that. If you look at Volkswagen stock, too, I think it was like maybe 5 to 10 years ago, someone bought up literally enough shares where for people to close their shorts, they had to buy it from him, so he could set whatever price he wanted. I mean, you see a very similar run up there. But it's very fascinating and entertaining to watch.
I thought it was awesome. Terry, did you watch any of this stuff this week? I mean, what did you make of it?
I'm generally kind of a hermit these days, and I'm exactly like you, though, Brett. I didn't know a damn thing about the stuff. I don't know anything about it, you know. And one good thing about another good thing about the Trump administration or Trump's presidency is because so much stuff was going on under people's noses that they didn't know, but now all of a sudden here I am reading about stonks. And then, I don't know, a while ago, you start reading about, how the CDC does their thing, or the World Health Organization, or hey, man, you know what? I want to take another look at what we're doing with NATO on that contract. And so I think that's another gift of what's happened the last 4 years is people are getting hip to this kind of stuff. And I don't know anything about like the way Matt does. I think it's an interesting – I'm sure there's going to be ramifications and fallout, and not everybody that we want to get hurt is going to get hurt, and maybe people that we don't want to get hurt will get hurt. But I do think it's another flashbang, it's another hand grenade into this sort of game. I think these dudes would have I think what they should have done, the hedge fund guys, was just take the L. Like instead of saying, they probably should have started off when it was going like, yeah, you guys got us, but instead they kept in, and then they had their friends bail them out, and then they changed the rules and right on the fly. And I think that's what shit like that unites the left and the right. Like it's funny because like people who have politically diametrically opposed views all agree that F those guys. Even if it's not right, even if it's not actually accurate, it's interesting to see people come together over something like that.
Except AOC, who reminded us that apparently we're all trying to kill her or something.
It's just, she's ridiculous.
She was almost murdered. And then I was thinking to myself, was she tending bar when Steve Scalise and all the Republicans were getting shot at by James Hodgson?
No, there was a contract on her, Brett, so just understand it. It was so bad.
But honestly, there's only one party, where blood has been shed, okay? And it's not her party, last I checked. But regardless, Terry, I think you're so right. This is kind of like, it's sort of like a great awakening of just another institution that is completely and totally rigged for all of flyover country, all of us plebs out here. And I think that's largely what it was to me. I'm just thinking to myself, okay, Janet Yellen's on the phone with Robinhood, with all of these institutions, with the Fed, and they're all colluding together to basically shut this down. They did shut it down for a while. I think on certain apps, or Robinhood and a couple other ones, but you can still buy on a couple other. I think E-Trade, as I recall, I think was still accessible. But
I think another big point too, and this is what the media doesn't really want you to see, is that hedge funds in 2018 were the biggest donators to the Democratic Party. So it's like that would be an interesting thing because we're all going, hey, F the hedge funds and these nasty guys who rig the game and play it. Guess who wanted the Dems to be in power? That'll tell you something.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that ties it together with like 2020 election stuff and even like pandemic stuff is it's kind of like the democratization of information and being able to do these things. People can look at CDC numbers and see what the actual numbers are. People can look at, the late night votes and see what the actual numbers are, and they don't like not being able to control things.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. Totally right.
It's a tough one. I mean, we all want to believe in these things, but when you see just open collusion like this, I mean, they're so blatant and brazen.
Right. Because they never lose. Their egos
and
are
also
so
if
big.
the media covering for you, why would you not do whatever you want?
Exactly right. Yeah.
But this isn't the 80s or the 90s when you only had, basically 3 networks controlling everything, and then you had Fox as this sort of scrappy upstart, which is
but only the crazy people watch that other stuff.
And that's where we are at this point. Fox is mainstream. I'm basically Newsmax, The First, Real America's Voice, and sometimes I'll dip into The Blaze. But I am
Federalist.
But I'm completely alternative now. I will tune into Tucker every once in a while, but frankly, I look forward to Greg Kelly and Jesse Kelly every day. Those are my two main dudes that I go to every day. Greg Kelly, love the guy. Jesse Kelly, hilarious, and also just prophetic, man. I mean, this guy.
He called it. He called it in March,
and he continues to call it.
And he's got the right. Jesse Kelly's got the right idea, and I hate to admit this because he's an awful human being.
He was so mean to you the other day, dude. He was so mean. But at the same time, we're Gen Xers, so we can take it. He's just talking shit.
Oh, he busts on me all the time because of the Army stuff. And I've been on his show a bunch of times.
Is that what it is? Is this a Marine?
Yeah. It's just how we just bust on each other nonstop. He's a really good guy, and one thing that he's in a great position to is that he just doesn't give a fuck. He'll fight, and he even says, he goes, "You got to fight back." And it's hard because some people's jobs are in a position where you're really going to take a lump. Jesse Kelly is a conservative, talk show guy, conservative broadcaster. So he's got the right idea in general, I think, to just don't yield. Do not yield, because if you do, I mean, even right now, what do these guys try to do when this GameStop thing happened? White supremacists did this.
Right.
I mean, and so at some point you just got to go, shut up. We're not listening to you. So I hope them overplaying their hand again just eventually leads to them being defeated. But I think we have a lot of people in the country, right or wrong, understandably, are not afraid of stepping out and going, you know what, this is wrong, because these dudes have so much power. Don't you think, Lise?
Well, but the other good part about it is kind of like with impeachment. If everything is impeachment and everything is white supremacy, then nothing is.
Right. Yeah.
They have a bingo board to determine what their line of attack is. And it's just like, all right, white supremacy, Proud Boys, Klansmen.
Yeah.
Well, and right. now it's kind of like I was saying to myself, okay, where do they go from here? We went from, racist, misogynist, homophobic, bigoted. Yeah. And then we went to Nazis, and it's sort of like, well, where do you go from there? So now it's domestic terrorists on the level with Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
We're a bunch of radicalized. We're a radicalized cult out here.
Well, then can we come back and say that we're just misunderstood, just like what they said about Al Qaeda, and it's our culture?
Right.
Remember when we declared war on women a decade ago?
Yes.
Yeah. That's another thing, Matt. Is like there's a collective. Wilkow calls it the history of now, and he's right, because there's no absorption of what's happened in the past. So it's like right now, oh my God, everything's Hitler. Yeah, this is the worst. AOC, I'm going to get assassinated in the. Listen, but that's been effective. Listen, and here's the thing: I was actually thinking about this when I was walking Larry. Hey, Larry.
Aww.
Yeah, he's not moving. When I was walking Larry out in the rain, I was actually I do this a lot at the beach. I hope I don't get in trouble. I mutter a lot and I talk while I'm walking. And I was thinking, I see you smile, Lisa. Don't judge. But I was thinking, I think you're a little judgy. But I think any objective person right now, looking at where we are in the country, you have to kind of admit the left is mostly won, or they're winning. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this situation where you have people defending communism, defending race politics, grievance politics, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, and then you ask yourself, okay, if the left is mostly won, who on my side, the right, meaning, constitutional freedom, who's actually really been willing to take the fight to the enemy? And it starts getting down to a pretty small list. Starts getting down to a small list of people who have actually really stood up and taken the shots and are still there.
Well, I mean, that's the downside of the right not censoring people, is that we're always fighting with ourselves
all the time.
The other side where, they're like, okay, the big picture is more important, whereas we're like, yeah, everybody gets to talk, so therefore we'll just fight with each other.
All the time.
And
I mean,
also,
you got a dude, if there was any governor who had pictures of themselves in blackface, which, by the way, I don't give a crap. I I don't believe in holding, like, dude, you did that in college. I mean, really, I mean, if someone said something awful about me or something, I don't care. But do you really think if we had a governor who did that stuff, who was a Republican, he'd still be in office? No, they don't. They won't. They never go after their own. That doesn't. And so, our position is always like, well, that's because we take the right path and we do the right thing. Yeah, I get that, but you're also getting your asses handed to you pretty much daily by an enemy. Yeah, and people who want to take my freedom and call me a Nazi and put me in the ground, I'm sorry. Maybe you're my countryman, but you're kind of my enemy right now by your terms, not my terms. Your terms. You said it. You said it, not me. Your words, not mine. Your actions, not mine. And so I'm not sure where we go from here because we got to fight back. And it's also, there's a lot of clever conservatives that are cowards that make fun of the people who fight for us because there's some of them are easy to make fun of. Right. It's easy to make fun of like Matt Gaetz or something like that, or because he's kind of funny dude and he's kind of dorky. But what the fuck are you doing for the fight? Like we're over here, all these smart conservatives in their leather jackets going, yeah, man, what an idiot. Well, what are you doing about it? Nothing.
I don't think they're wearing leather jackets.
Matt Gaetz has amazing hair.
He's got fantastic hair. And he's fighting though.
But
he's fighting.
The other thing is, I will say this, and I have seen him. I saw him at CPAC. I didn't bother him, but he had a huge crowd around him. But he does wear way too skinny of pants. But that's also kind of in style. So
that's all fun. But I get that's what I'm saying.
However,
the millennial technically
he is. But however, the guy is an absolute warrior. And he's one of the only guys up there. It's kind of like Hawley and Gates and Cruz. I mean, these guys are, they're really hanging their ass out on the line while the rest are all basically ducking for cover and trying to ensure that they have a future working in Washington. Where I look at those guys and I think to myself, I don't think they care. I think they're up there for the right reasons. And that's the same with Margie Green. Is that her name?
Yeah, right.
She's awesome, but they're going after her, and they're going to try and make an example out of her. And
until though you stop, the Democrats have actually let Omar and Tlaib and all these Maxine Waters saying just go ahead and do violence. Yeah. It's not whataboutism to point out that what you're saying is bad for our side is not bad for your side. And at some point, instead of us following the shiny ball, Jesse Kelly actually said this very correctly. He goes, they're going to have you chasing a laser pointer all the time. And the conservatives are just fucking dumb enough to do it. Instead of going, we're not playing your game. We're not going to fight you. I mean, we're not going to fight you.
You brought up Maxine Waters. I don't know if you saw the story this week where someone took that Maxine Waters quote about confronting Trump supporters, and they swapped in Cuomo supporters instead of, and there was this huge backlash against her.
Yeah.
And some of the same people, when they realized what they were denouncing, were like, "Oh, well, it was a different time with Trump. Things are different now."
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just you can't win. It's just all one big reality show, and we can't. It sucks so bad.
Well, I will say this: the one bright spot in all this, and Jesse's talked about this quite a bit. Jesse's actually starting to echo what I've been saying for probably since 2016, which is now the left owns all these institutions, and they've subverted all of them. Being education, entertainment, tech, the media. What do we do about it? Well, the thing we do about it is we invade these spaces and we start creating our own culture. Yeah. And we saw that with the Daily Wire. We talked about that.
You've been saying that for a long time, dude. So
I have. I've been, and it was Clinton Cash graphic novel. Okay, that's my entry point into being a conservative creator and creating culture to fight the culture war. And we need more of that, and we need it, among all multimedia. Okay, and I think I said last time that I don't want to see any more documentaries. That's not true. I only want to see documentaries if they're directed by Nick Searcy or Amanda Milius. But I do want to see documentaries. Okay, I think we should be doing everything. You got to kind of flood the zone, right, with content. And we haven't been creating content. And we'll get into one of the original culture warriors at our last segment. But speaking of keeping up with the fight, let's jump into our next segment, which is Donald Trump meets with Kevin McCarthy at Mar-a-Lago to plan 2022 Republican House takeover. This is the first appearance of Trump post-presidency. And what I found interesting about this was they were talking about no third parties. Okay, we're not going to become the Bull Moose Party, and we're not going to go down the path of Ross Perot in '92. Most of us Gen Xers remember Ross Perot pretty well, probably more from Dana Carvey doing him on SNL. which was just classic.
He was good.
Everyone needs to go and find Dana Carvey doing Ross Perot, and one of the best was, he'd get up there, the ears, the makeup, the glasses, and he had a graph, and he'd say something like, if you got a boat and the boat's got no water, the boat's useless. Use things like that. It was hilarious. But this is where I see us going if we go third party. There's no infrastructure. It's a complete – we're going to end up like the libertarians. Which
why do we – and by the way, the other question is, why do we have to fucking leave?
Well, yeah, that has been my thing, is that –
why do we have to fucking go? You guys go.
The victims,
exactly.
You can't say we're the majority and we're going to go start a new party. And that's why Trump was so great in 2016, because – and this was like sort of my point with like Nick Gillespie and the libertarians, is like, you should love Trump because he just proved that you can take over a party. And it's totally ridiculous when there's like, there's like 5 never Trumpers, but the 75 million have to leave. That makes no sense. Yeah. And also,
what does he say to that? Because I like Nick. What does Nick say when you say? Because I like Nick Gillespie. I think he's great.
Well, when I wrote the article in like 2015 or so, he liked it. But the other reason we can't leave, since Terry shared, is it would be like bad news bears for me, because
you're branded.
So I don't want to get a new tattoo or cover it up or anything like that.
Well, then that's got to be the campaign right there, Lisa. That's it right there.
Yeah.
That's it.
We can't have her having it covered up. It just doesn't make any sense.
Bro, you sent me that Office Space meme about the third party where you're like, why do we need to change the other one who sucks or whatever?
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty much it. I mean, the thing is, if we were a European country where like their equivalent of the House and Senate has like 10 different parties, that could work. But in the context of a two-party system, you're only siphoning votes until the other side has their own equivalent.
It's not political strategy. It's just math.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also it's done out of emotion. I mean, people aren't thinking about this practically. And Larry Schweikert, who's a good friend of mine and who is infinitely smarter than I am, said that that's a loser. The path forward is to continue to take over the Republican Party and flood it with MAGA and America First candidates. And the Liz Cheneys, the Mitt Romneys, the Ben Sasses, they're kind of over with anyway. I think they know that, and that's why they vote. I think 5 of them voted for impeachment last week. These people, they know they're done.
Yeah, it's a vote for their next TV gig. It's not for anything else.
That's
true.
That's something I was thinking about the other day. Most people run, like Andrew Yang. This guy ran, and it's the same with like Al Sharpton. They run so they can get gigs on CNN, and then they can be called past presidential candidate, and then they've got some kind of gravitas when they're sitting there with the Brady Bunch squares, with 20 guests on CNN, and they're all yelling at each other about Trump, who's gone now, by the way. Maybe somebody should let them know. But it's, it's like Trump runs because he wants to help. And we were talking about the difference between some of these candidates. I look at Gates, I look at some of these guys, maybe they'll end up on Fox as some contributor if they want, but most of these guys are just in it for themselves. So, and it's just so phony. But I thought this was good news. I like this. I'm not a huge Kevin McCarthy fan.
By the way, I don't trust McCarthy at all. I don't trust him. And you shouldn't trust him. Nah. And all I remember, like he had that tweet out a while ago after he won his election, like he was like walking and like nobody contested him, and it was just like, oh, Slay Queen. Do not ever think for 1 minute that McCarthy would not throw Trump under the bus. McCarthy is an opportunistic Republican. He is.
I look at that guy and I just see somebody who wants everyone to like him, and then it makes me think of Ricky Nelson's Garden Party, which is, you can't please everyone, so you might as well please yourself. Mm-hmm. Meaning you can't go through life expecting everyone to like you, but
except for me.
Right. That's, it's
dainty cough. Sorry.
All right, so let's move on to something fun, which is some cancel culture. Basically, we have. I'm going to share this real quick. We have this is from Bounding into Comics. American literary professionals call on publishers to deny book deals for members of the Donald Trump administration. We just saw this with Hawley. He's not necessarily in the Trump administration, but he had a book deal with Simon & Schuster. They bailed on it, which is very similar to what Simon & Schuster did with Milo back in 2016 with Dangerous. Hawley was rescued by Regnery. I knew he would find a home. all this is going to do is make people want to buy the book more. It's frankly fantastic free publicity for Josh Hawley. He should be thanking the left, maybe sending them flowers. But at the same time, this is not good. I mean, who are these American literary professionals anyway? But at the same time, the attitude I don't think is necessarily healthy in America, or at least the one that I was born into. What do you think?
You guys, you and Matt are the book people. Like,
That's true, Matt. You know,
guys, I mean, like, and I will do a plug. If you haven't read Social Justice Warrior handbook, it's so good.
I have it on my bookshelf.
It's so good. It's so funny. And by the way, the only reason I'm really plugging it, not because I like it, but because I'm in it.
I'm gonna go grab my new one. I'll be right back.
I'm a cartoon. I'm a cartoon in it. Again, this just goes back to what I said. The left is winning because if you have people doing this, that just tells you that they're willing to use that kind of structure to crush people. And it also shows that they are scared, because if they were really dismissive of you and they thought you'd be mocked and roundly criticized for writing that, they wouldn't try to enforce it by banning you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, when I used to travel college campuses with like speakers like Ann Coulter and people like that, we always left the most time for Q&A, because our side is like, give that crazy person a microphone. You know, we want them to be heard, whereas they are the opposite.
Yeah, right. Our side's like, give it
and can't convince anyone. Why would you not just want us to talk and help you?
100% right.
I was going to say, give them the rope. You know what I mean? That's what our side does. Give them more rope to hang themselves by. That's always a fantastic.
That's racist.
It's got to be something.
We need to modify that expression. What's another way to kill people to kill themselves? It's more progressive. I don't know. Anyway.
Right.
Give that person a Kate Spade scarf.
Yeah, exactly.
Gosh, that's awful.
One of Dr. Burks' scarves, frankly. I think those were all Hermes. I think she's sponsored, frankly. That's what I heard, though. Yeah. I don't know. I think this is stupid, and frankly, it just shows you. I mean, we all expect this kind of hypocrisy, but at the same time, what I have a problem with this is you're denying somebody kind of the right to earn a living. I mean, yes, somebody's going to pick this book up because at least there's some semblance of a free market within publishing at this point, even though a lot of books on the right end up at Post Hill, or they end up at Regnery. One of the things that happened with Clinton Cash graphic novel, we were talking about this off air, was our original publisher that Steve Bannon had landed for us was Hachette, which is like the third largest publisher in the world. They had already seen probably about 50 or 60 pages of finished artwork. And what was interesting was we had a different cover for Clinton Cash graphic novel. This is the cover, but when we presented this to Hachette, this was the cover, which is the original cover.
Is that the original? That's right?
Well, it's the original, but I had Paul Ravoche illustrate it. So, I mean, you can kind of see it's illustrated, but at the same time, I was coming from the standpoint of, okay, we want to sell this and we want to tie into the branding of the original book, which is why you have kind of the original logo and you have the same kind of title down below with Peter, basically. He's got the big marquee because he's a bigger name than Chuck or I in politics. But this was my idea, just to stick with the branding. Hachette came back and they said, you know what? We like that cover, but we like this other splash page. We like this other page that we think the cover should look like. And it's the cover for the chapter in the book called India's Nukes. And I will find it here. Here we go. So it's based on a Bollywood poster. Okay. That was kind of the idea that we had. So this whole book was basically kind of like the National Lampoon. So we did a lot of parodies and a lot of satire and a lot of it's just laced with humor. And so we did this Bollywood parody with the Clintons, and we've got one of their donors in this. We got this big nuclear explosion going on in the background. We got one of their donors in this car flying, and he's throwing cash everywhere. And they're like, so they love this kind of idea. They're like, we want this for the cover. And I said, well, that's not really a cover. You can't. It's not meant. It's a splash page. They said, well, let's redo it. So I submitted 3 ideas: movie parody cover art. We did Trading Places, Brewster's Millions, and what was the other one? It had Peter Falk in it. The Heist. And we ended up with the heist, which was Peter Falk and a bunch of the other guys who were the bank robbers. They blew a hole in like the bottom of this bank. They tunneled up into it, and then all the money rains down on top of them. So that's where this came up with. But I have to credit Hachette. Hachette was the ones who said, if you change the cover, we'll publish the book. So we have a deal. Hooray!
Then what happened?
So then Hillary gets the nomination. And they are scared shitless, or from what I understand, half their board is scared shitless. Half want to do it because they think it's a great idea and it's a commercial through line to a massive amount of new readers, young readers, okay? Which it was. But the idea was, if she's the nominee and we think she's going to win, and when she wins, she's going to come after us.
She'll crush them, right?
So we don't want anything to do with this. It's too politically radioactive at this point now that she has the nomination, and she's more than likely going to beat Trump, which was the general consensus at the time, all the way up until election night. So, so anyway, I jump on the phone. So anyway, I hear this, and I said, let's go find another publisher. So I jump on the phone with Anthony Zaccardi at Post Hill. He's interested. Harper, who originally turned it down, who published the original Clinton Cash, they were interested again, or they were interested now because they had seen what we had done on the interior. And then Regnery jumped in, and we had a bidding war for about 48 hours. We ended up with Regnery, and the rest is history. The other thing Regnery did was they said, hey, let's do a hardcover. Let's do a paper overboard, which is kind of like a poor man's hardcover. It's sort of like the Without a Dust Jacket. And that was also fantastic because it's only 112 pages, but you give it that nice chunky feel, and then then it's kind of like asking $20 for this thing isn't such a big deal, right? So that was it. You get more production value out of it. So it was like I learned so much on that project, which I incorporated into future projects with like Thump and others. But there's always a way, but at the same time, I still think this sucks.
I have that Thump sticker you gave me on my computer, and someone just pointed and is like, "Why is Trump on your computer?" And I completely forgot. I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then they're like, "No, there's like a bunny that's Trump." And it's very awkward. But
Matt, is your goal for Dumb and Dumber to sell at least as many books as they killed?
Ooh, that would be very profitable. So yes. That wasn't my goal until 10 seconds ago, but I thought about that, yes. It was actually a very easy book to write, and just a lot of fun. Like I get to roast these people for a couple hundred pages, or not really a couple hundred, like 140, because I don't have time to write anymore. But I don't know. Should I talk about this book, or is it? You
need like an expanded edition at this point with all the new quotes from Cuomo recently.
Well, the thing is, I had like a month and a half deadline to write it. But I probably could have done 2 or 3 times this if I wasn't, working full time.
So that book has humor in it.
Well, what I consider to be me being funny, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, no, I think that's great.
Here you go, grab my book and hold it up.
No, I think
looked at my bookshelf when I was looking for this one, but I couldn't find it.
That's okay.
No, humor is a great commercial through line. That's how you reach new people. And all you got to do is look at like Blazing Saddles. As offensive as that movie is, it reaches out to everybody. Everybody can find that movie funny because everybody's lampooned and made fun of, and therefore nobody's offended. But I've always thought, and that was one of the pitches I had to Bannon and Peter Schweizer when we were doing Clinton Cash was, what direction you want to go? I said, I think it's got to be funny. Yeah. And it's kind of like, well, how do you make that book funny? How do you make that funny?
I'm hoping people judge it based on the cover because I think that's what's going to sell it.
The title too. You got a great title.
Title is also good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. But yeah, I've got an interview for you that book like this week, dude, because it's back in the news. And what are we up to now? Is it 50,000? Is that the total deaths at this point from the nursing homes in New York?
So the nursing homes alone is like I think 12,000 or so. Overall is close to what you're saying. The last number I remember hearing is like in the mid 30,000-ish area, but they're obviously changing so quickly that.
But there was like 50%. Underreported, I think.
Yeah, correct. It was like, and I actually in the book try to extrapolate, like based on other states and stuff, like what their actual rate probably was. And the number I got was actually, I think, just a little bit lower than what the AG is alleging. So we're kind of a little bit ahead.
Yeah, Terry, the worst part for me, and I lost my grandma 98 about 4 months ago, not to COVID, but just to being 98. I love these headlines, that I see all the time when it's like 104-year-old man dies of COVID. It's like. how much longer do we expect this?
You're at an age where you die of whatever you get next. It's
we're getting that. But I want to ask you guys, because you guys you're all published authors and all this kind of stuff.
So are you?
Yeah, but you guys are better. I'm more of a ruggedly handsome TV host, but that's something else.
TV personality, celebrity extraordinaire.
I'm a D-list cable celebrity with a background in kicking ass for America. But the question is, and we were talking about this last time we were on, and I asked Cersei about this, and what's weird is that you got to find these workarounds to get your book done because you're dealing with these entities that don't want it published. At some point, maybe this is where Trump could come in, or someone with a lot of money just say, you know what, we don't even need to talk to you, and just have an entertainment conglomerate where you don't have to work around and negotiate these hurdles with people who want to shut you down or are afraid of, well, we really like what you got. This is a cool project, Brett, or, hey, Matt, we love it. But you know what, right now we got, is that going to happen, do you think? Or because you guys are in the business? I mean, because I feel like the first couple people who actually step out into the ether about this and put together this kind of are going to be massively successful.
Yeah, we do need a parallel economy because we can be the platform for anything.
That's what I'm saying.
To the point where there are people who have been restricted from, I think it was Gavin McInnes or someone similar to him. I think their bank started not letting them use their services. When it gets to that extent, it was what's next? Is it your utility company? And
they've told you they're going to do it. So I mean, what I'm saying is, if someone's got the balls and the money, come in and just go, you know what? F all of you guys. This is a safe place for you to bring your shit. It's still got to be good, got to be entertaining, got to be funny, Brett, or whatever you want. Yeah. But instead of having to do these constant workaround with these machinations of, well, this guy's good, this guy's not conservative. Someone can, if someone steps up and really does this, they're gonna be successful, I think.
And the problem is whenever we've had donors do that, because I've been in the nonprofit world for 20 years or so. Then the political message overtakes everything else, and you end up with documentaries, or even David Zucker did that movie with a bunch of conservative actors, which was still so in your face that no one but a conservative saw it.
And that's not what
right. That was a hilarious movie.
But you're right though, because that's just it. You've got to let go of the myth is that somehow people on the left have the market cornered on creativity. You guys,
the example I always give is Dallas Buyers Club, because there's no better libertarian, anti-overregulation movie than Dallas Buyers Club. But that movie would never be made by conservatives because it has gay people.
Yeah,
and trans. It's got Jared Leto as a trans.
I mean, now it would, but I think when it came out, was
that's interesting. You think that's changed though, Lisa, the climate? I think it is. I'm saying
back when that movie came out. I mean, Chris isn't here, but shout out to Chris, who was the founder of Go Proud, and people don't like to talk about or don't remember this, but Go Proud is who, along with me, obviously, brought Trump to CPAC. Trump came at the invitation of a group that was being pushed out of CPAC because they were gay. And despite all that, he said, I want to be there for that group. Ultimately, I wasn't allowed to continue at CPAC because I allowed Trump to come and I allowed the gays to come. But I think it's totally different now.
That's so crazy.
I know, no. And I don't mean this as a dig against current CPAC, because none of that.
No, I know that. You never come off like that. Yeah.
No, and also I have plenty of other reasons for that.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think for the gay part it would be. But I also wonder if we also now are having some things that are too big to fail, because we've always had Mel Gibson and just up until a certain point Arnold, and I think now you're seeing Matthew McConaughey is kind of too big to fail, because he's been talking good things about Jordan Peterson. He's been doing everybody's podcasts and shows to promote his book, and I think that's great because it is mainstreaming those types of things. Like Jordan Peterson, who was supposed to be just like some incel god or something. And
Also,
think
also if you watch too, I've never seen any of these shows or these movies, but Gina Carano, who has been just attacked roundly. I mean, I actually know her from her MMA career, and I haven't watched any Star Wars stuff, but like some of the stuff she puts out is very sane and fine, and yet she's been lambasted. But it doesn't seem like she's backing down, and I think the people who the Star Wars people, they would be unwise to let that go. So when you get people like that on that level, they don't have to be wildly conservative, or just like, hey, everybody calm the fuck down, and and be for freedom.
Gina
I mean, it's kind of like the thing that is like even Matthew McConaughey or her, they're not overtly conservative and wouldn't call themselves conservative, but they say things like on the level of, maybe we shouldn't hate conservatives, and that's just like, oh my god.
Right. Maybe they're not Nazis. Maybe they're not domestic terrorists.
Isn't it? I don't know how no one's made this point before, but it's so weird that like Nazi is the default like pejorative. Like, when are you ever like, God, that really reminds me of that political party from the 30s and 40s? Like, no one's ever like, God, the Khmer Rouge. I'm worried about those guys.
That's funny, man.
I don't understand.
Well, the other thing is,
come up with a new one.
Well, they also
group that exists today and link them to. I don't know.
But
that's a good point. I think it's because the Nazi thing is so embedded culturally in our entertainment too that's why.
Well, we were talking about that last time. How Hollywood's only comfortable with Nazis at this point. It's here and there where they've had Muslim extremists as the.
We talked about this last time.
Yeah, it's like a handful of films, basically. I mean,
they're afraid to identify. They're afraid to identify or call the people that we've been fighting for all this time enemies. Look, it is what it is. You may not like that, but that's who we've been fighting. And
frankly, they don't have to call them enemies. I mean, they those people act as enemies every day. It's their actions. But Gina, it's funny. I didn't know Gina. I knew a little bit about her. I saw Haywire, which is Steven Soderbergh's movie, where that's her debut. Fantastic movie, very good. I mean, Soderbergh rarely makes a bad movie, basically. But Haywire is very good. Lots of action. Gina, I thought was a pretty good actress. It's more action, really, and she's kind of like the old school tough guy. Doesn't say much in that movie. It's all about her actions. Bill Paxton's in it. So that's cool.
I haven't seen that. Yeah, I got to see that. Yeah,
it's a good movie, and I just thought, wow, this chick's gonna be something, man. And then it's like I went back, started looking at her MMA, and then over the years, she was rumored as the next Wonder Woman. She was dating Henry Cavill for a while. They were an item, so you had Superman and potentially Wonder Woman together. But like when everybody started piling on her, and frankly, the stuff that she tweets is not conservative. It's not center right. It's like common sense type shit. Frankly, it's very down the middle.
Center right now, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just funny. I knew that like when the heat started coming on her, I knew she wasn't going to back down. And why? Because she's MMA. She's from that culture, and that culture.
Some of them might, dude. I've seen some of those cats back down. And
have you really?
Yeah, or at least they just don't. Or maybe they already kind of are left. I think you're probably mostly right, but I also think the pressure is incredibly great on these people, and maybe she's just one of those people who's like, I don't really care, And I also think she's smart enough to realize. Could you imagine if she was fired from this? I mean, they would be. They would not. I don't think if they fired her and said she says things we don't like on Twitter, they would probably lose more than they would with keeping her on, because people are still going to watch.
It makes a difference that this is kind of her second career, and that's not like her first thing.
Right. Well, I mean, what has she got to lose?
No, I'm telling you, man. I don't know this for a fact, but I've read about it, and it's something I believe. Jon Favreau, as long as he is there, she's got a job, because John is your age, Terry. He's an older Gen Xer.
Yep.
He doesn't give a shit about that stuff. What John wants is what's best for the show. What's best for The Mandalorian is Gina Carano, because Cara Dune is a beloved character. She's fantastic in the show. She's so awesome.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it all, but I do think Favreau is a really, really good director. He's a really good director. And I think he's kept his politics out of it. I actually think he probably caught him with some beers somewhere else, he'd be kind of a center right kind of guy, because I think that's maybe who he is. But either way, it doesn't matter, and I don't give a shit. People like us don't give a shit. If you give me something really good to watch that's got things that appeal to me, whether it's whatever it is, I'm cool with it. And so I think Favreau's smart to be that way.
Terry, you really like The Mandalorian because it's essentially a Western. It is kind of this anarchistic Western, and then it's also got the Lone Wolf and Cub. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it was a Japanese comic book in the 70s.
No, I haven't seen anything of this.
It's a Ronin. It's a samurai who doesn't have a master, roaming the countryside with his toddler son, and he's called the baby cart assassin. So he just goes from village to village, kind of like kung fu, gets into adventures, usually ends up with him filleting and slashing and decapitating somebody at the end, and then his kid starts wielding the sword as well. But fantastic comic book.
Well, you guys are watching all this new stuff. I just basically watched Palumbo reruns. So you know what? And I was lambasted roundly for that, and I will not apologize.
The last time I was on Gavin McInnes' show, which was like 2 years ago, in the background that he had a TV and he just was playing Palumbo reruns as we were talking.
Yeah, I mean, with me right now, it's still Magnum. I still go back to that.
It still holds up pretty well, actually.
It's so fantastic. And what's amazing about those shows is the economy. They are able to tell, a great story within about 48 minutes. I mean, I don't know many writers who can do that these days. But the guy that produced Magnum, Belisario, Vietnam vet. And one of his intentions with Magnum was to correct the narrative about the Vietnam vets.
Right, I heard that.
And that's part of what that show was about, was to give them kind of, to give them a sympathetic look and to get the audience to have empathy for them. And it really, I still, to this day, I say that the VA operates, and also the attitude towards vets in America is the reaction to the way the vets were treated when they came home from Vietnam. My dad was told when he came home, don't wear your uniform.
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah.
And that's how shameful. And now, what do we see at the airports? I mean, the exact opposite. I mean, flowers and families and jubilation and everybody walking up to service members and thanking them. It's Go ahead, Matt.
I just as a brief. I have a friend who works for the Army, but he just purchases stuff for them, but he still gets to wear the uniform. So he says people will come up and thank him, and he's like, no, you don't have to. So
oh my God!
By the
way, did you guys know that? Because did you? I bet you knew this, Brett. You guys probably knew it. Me being borderline boomer Gen X, because that's what they call me, even though I'm 10. Is that Selleck? They wanted Selleck for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep.
That was their guy. And then there was a contract. So, and I guess the TV people had been sitting on Magnum and they weren't moving on it. And so when they offered it to Tom Selleck, the TV people came and said, no, we're going to do Magnum PI. And so they were tires for it.
Well, the other thing was, I had heard, I saw an interview with Tom where he said, and it was in around the time, we're talking 84, 83, 84. I think Raiders was 82. Something like that. But he said he could have done it, but what it would have meant was the cancellation of the show, which also meant Larry and everybody would have been out of a job. The actors have been out of a job. The crew would have been out of a job. The secondary, that production was a big production. I have a friend who was a nurse practitioner in the 80s on the Big Island. Her roommate dated Selleck, and for a short time before he got married. And that was a big production, and it was the crew, secondary and tertiary jobs that production created. Okay, right. Hotels, restaurants,
in Hawaii.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, and then on top of that, it's like that show. It was sort of an advertisement for Hawaii in a lot of ways. I mean, it behooved Hawaii to have that show there, frankly, because it wasn't super successful on the first season, but the second season it got big and he blew up. But Tom said that he wanted to do it. He loved the idea. I mean, everything about Raiders was just, I gotta do that. But he just said he had to sit back and kind of weigh, do I do this and then put this show, which is at its peak right now, and all these people out of work? So
there's a book I have about all the making of
Larry Manetti. Larry Manetti wrote a book, which I've got to read, but this is a
big coffee table book, and there's pictures in there of Tom Selleck's screen test with Sean Young for Raiders of the Lost Ark. They really liked her for that too.
That doesn't surprise me because Sean was just coming off Blade Runner, and I think she had done Dune, so she was definitely everybody's going after her. But Karen Allen,
She was perfect.
She was perfect, man. She's absolutely perfect. So,
by the way, Steven Spielberg said, I just wanted to incorporate this rolling ball thing. Dude, what is that one? Is it God, there was a movie in the 50s and it was James May. It was what the ball, the boulder comes. It was exactly like what I saw.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so much of
Straight to the center of the earth, maybe? Is that what it was?
Well, so much of Raiders is Lucas. That's really kind of his baby. He just had Steven do it. But Lucas loved all of those 50s serials. That's what Star Wars is based
and you can clearly see that, yeah.
The cliffhanger at the end where you don't know whether the hero lives or dies, but you got to show up next week to find out. And then they have this, they have like this inserted scene where instead of going off the cliff in the car, he jumps out at the last minute or something, you know. That's the kind of stuff that you got back then with like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers and those serials. But I mean, Raiders fantastic. I don't know, you know, who knows where it would have gone with Tom, man. I mean, they're going to do a new one. Did you guys hear about this? They're actually going to do another fucking Raiders.
They're filming it now, aren't they? Or
Harrison's like, you know, he's crashing airplanes. He's breaking his leg in the Millennium Falcon on the last Star Wars shoot. I mean, who's really going to be Indy in this? The stunt double or Harrison? I mean, he's just going to show up for close-ups and like medium shots. I mean,
I still haven't seen the one. I think it's the one before this where he like
with Shia.
No, the one where he survives a nuclear explosion in a fridge. I mean,
that was the Crystal Skull.
That's Shia.
Still have yet to see that, but.
Yeah, dude, and is Shia going to be in this new one? Because that movie was like even my parents went and saw the Crystal Skull, and they're boomers, and they were just like, this was pretty bad, and this was obviously made for like our crowd. Because they asked me, did you go see the Indiana Jones? I said no. They're like, it's not for you, and I was just like, what do you mean? They're like, well, it's for an older crowd. I was like,
it was okay, but it wasn't the best of them. No, it wasn't the best of them.
I still think Raiders is the best one. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. Overall, that one, and then I mean, I like
Temple of Doom.
Last Crusade. I mean, I do like that one too.
Yeah, you know what I really like in that was River Phoenix playing young Indy.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool.
It's amazing how he apes Harrison, like his facial expressions
and the running down the hill and all that kind of stuff.
Dude, River, man. I mean, what a talent! Unbelievable. You know, absolutely unbelievable. All right, last thing I want to talk about here is something also comes out of Bounding in the comics. Disney scooper claims that the company will soon attack founder Walt Disney as racist. Song of the South has not been available for, I don't know, like 25 years. So, I mean, they've been retconning Disney for a long time. I don't think that they've necessarily gone in and take scenes out. They just banned movies altogether. Now you've got, with Disney Plus, if you watch Peter Pan, or I think it was another film, they give you some kind of warning saying this is, you know, they give you some context. This is from this era, you know, and I've seen it also with, you know, when you start watching a movie and it'll pop up in the left-hand corner screen, it'll show the rating and it might say, you know, adult language, violence.
Drugs or something like that, right?
Now it's smoking. You know, if it's from the 60s, from the 70s, from the 80s, everybody's just like chuffing away. You know, it's like.
Thank you for
they should put warnings on all the movies of people wearing masks.
Have you guys seen Thank You for Smoking?
No.
Or they're like 6 feet close to each other.
There's a senator in the film that's trying to get certain warning labels put on cigarettes, and he loses that battle. So at the end, he's all defeated, but he rebrands and tries to get cigarettes removed from movies, and it took about 10 years for it to actually happen, it seems.
That was Aaron Eckhart was in that, right?
Yeah.
Thank You for Not Smoking. Great movie. Great movie.
Yeah.
Thank You for Smoking.
Thank You for Smoking. Yeah. I love Aaron Eckhart. I always thought he would have made a really good Captain America back in the day, but they never moved on it.
He's great. He's a great talent.
Total lantern jaw, kind of like you. You know what I mean? You got that jaw.
Yeah.
But I mean, this doesn't really surprise me. I mean, I've been calling that they're going to go after Walt. Walt, in my opinion, is kind of one of the original culture warriors. He testified in front of Congress back in '47 that Hollywood was taking over, or the communists were taking over Hollywood. I mean, he was one of the sort of early canaries in the coal mine. He's also one of these guys who was within the stuff that he produced while he was there. All of that stuff reflected and affirmed that which was good about America and Western civilization. And I think that's largely why they're coming after him, because
that's what the warning needs to be. Warning, this is good things about America.
Yeah, yeah.
That's exactly right. Warning: positive America stuff might throw you off a little bit.
It's honestly, man. And we were talking about this too. It's like one of my favorite Walt Disney pictures is, and I saw it in the theater, was Robin Hood. Saw it with my dad, and then obviously on cable. Huge syndication on cable in the '80s. Fox and the Hound and Robin Hood are my two favorites. But you go back and you watch Robin Hood, and it's like this total breakdown of why taxation is so awful. You've got the king who is using the sheriff, and sheriffs were originally the tax collectors back in England and also in the Old West. We had Sheriff John Slaughter down in Wilcox, who was the tax collector. He was famous for the saying, shoot first and ask questions later. How'd you like to have that?
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. All of 5'2" used to carry around a double-barrel shotgun. One of the most feared sheriffs in the Old West.
Huh.
But anyway, it's like you got King John employing the sheriff to go around and tax the people, overtax the people, and then you got Robin Hood and his merry band and Little John and his merry band of pranksters going around and stealing from the sheriff and giving the money back to the poor. I swear that's partially that, and Alex B. Keaton is probably why I ended up being center right more than likely. These cultural, these cultural characters can have an effect.
And that's why Disney needs to be stopped.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly right.
Well,
the thing about, they have to call Disney racist because they can't call them anti-Semitic, because then they have their own problem on that side.
Right. Yeah, they've got to find the right one that can stick, and that will actually be will get traction on. And it's part of just destroy Disney. When you think of, and it hasn't probably been this way for a long time, but I'm 55, so I grew up watching. On Sundays, I'd sit on the big chair with my dad, or on the couch. I'd be on his lap watching the on Sunday night the Disney hour, mm-hmm. and then we went to all those Bambi and all these different movies. And Disney they've taken themselves out of that now, but it's still kind of there. Disney is almost synonymous with like wholesome American entertainment, and so that's a problem, right? So like that's got to go away. And so whether Disney had whatever his beliefs were or not, whatever he did, that is, what I'm saying? Like they're always going to find. They're the same way they're taking down Catholic saints statues and our political leaders and people from the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. This is really the same thing. It's like get rid of stuff that stood for something that we don't agree with now.
Well, isn't it also communists, kind of communism 101, destroy the past, eliminate the past, disappear 100%. The past.
Right.
So the present and the future have no reference points. You can't call out and say,
only want to keep the bad things of the past, but not show any progress.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's right.
But they can rewrite it in their own image. George Washington and the founders were really just a bunch of racist old white guys who didn't want to pay their taxes and keep their slaves. I mean, that's the narrative for two generations. My generation, I didn't really get that, but as Jack Posobiec likes to call them, the centennials, the 80s babies really got that. And I think the Gen Zers got that too, which is insane. So they're teaching an abridged version of American history, and they're going to have an abridged version of Walt.
Well, but it's not even just to tear down history, because even if all of those things were true, and for some people it was, the connection is it has to be a reason to give other groups something else now. And put other groups down now.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, here we go. Messages accompanying all four of these Disney films. We got Pirates and the Princess. We got Peter Pan, the Swiss Family Robinson, Dumbo, and the Aristocrats. They're all racist. So messages accompanying all these films on Disney Plus read, this program includes negative depictions and or misrepresent of peoples of culture. These stereotypes were wrong then and wrong now. Oh my God. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. My God, I want to puke. Nobody can think for themselves. Nobody's taught to critically think, so that's why you need... Dude,
you're not allowed.
Like fucking PMRC all over again, basically.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's not some dumb sticker, you know. And frankly, those stickers, all they made kids like me want to do is just buy the album even more.
Yeah.
You know, and my dad's like, "What's that?" You know, my parents didn't even give a shit. You know, they're like, he hears worse things when he watches MTV, frankly.
It's weird where there's like a lag on cancel culture. Like, I mean, people have known Walt Disney had anti-Semitic views for like the past 70 or 80 years, and now it's a problem. Or like when Robert Downey Jr. did blackface in Tropic Thunder, and then it took 12 years for anyone to notice and care. Like in the latter case, it's like so no one actually cares then, right? Like, how does it?
Right, it's selective, and it's when it's actually advantageous for them to bring it up. That's right.
Well, and Eddie Murphy can go and do White Like Me. You remember that? You know, from Saturday Night Live, where
punching up. It's punching up, so it's okay.
That's true. He's oppressed, so he can. Right. He's just giving it back to to Whitey. I get it. I love that thing. It's just the White Like Me thing is just so brilliant. Everybody needs to watch that if you haven't seen it. Yeah,
but also, you know, you should point out that the good thing about White Like Me is that it also points out the absurdity of what they're saying happens.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's actually not that way for white people.
Right.
But they act like it is. Like, you don't go into a store and get to take whatever you want.
You know,
I wish someone would. That'd be great. No.
Only during a protest or Black Friday.
You know, it's really strange to me because Disney Plus has a documentary on Walt called Imagineers, and it's really fascinating. I've watched it twice, and it doesn't paint him to be a bad guy at all. I mean, it makes him out to be what he was, which is largely a creative genius, one of which probably comes around maybe every 50 years. You know, the guy was absolutely genius. His brother was a genius. I mean, you look at what they built, and it's definitely being subverted from within. And, you know, and really, I think the only thing that I see out there that's not subverted within Disney at this point is The Mandalorian. That and The Right Stuff. They did do a new series on The Right Stuff on Tom Wolfe's book. It's an 8-part series. It's different than the movie from the standpoint of the style. They don't try and copy Phil Kaufman's style in that movie, and there's very much an overt style to what Phil did with the movie. But there's a lot of great stuff that didn't make it into the movie that's in this series because they had
cool. I haven't seen that.
Of 8 hours, and it's fantastic, man. And they don't play it down. They stick to the book. I've read the book like 4 times because it's one of my favorites. It's fantastic. Everybody should read The Right Stuff by Tom Wolfe.
Or the audiobook. Dennis reads it.
Yeah. Dennis played Gordo Cooper, who was his hero growing up as a kid. I mean, think about that. I mean, you idolize this guy, you know, and he's the last of the Mercury 7 to go into space. And Gordo landed his capsule within like a half a mile where it was supposed to go down. The guy was an absolute killer. He went farther and faster and longer, orbited the Earth more than anybody at that time, and then puts this thing down basically right on the fucking X.
Wow.
You know? And that's why, dude, that's why he was called Hot Dog. You know,
yeah.
I mean, that's exactly.
I'm gonna have to go back. I've never read the book, and it's shame on me, but I got to go back and see that. I see that again because it's been a long time since I've seen that.
Well, Disney Plus produced this with National Geographic, and I'm sure National Geographic had quite a lot to say about the creatively what it was going to be. And then they did another documentary on the Mercury 7 as a companion piece. So you know, I mean, I have Disney Plus largely for The Mandalorian. If they released it on Blu-ray tomorrow, I would buy it all and I would cancel my subscription because, frankly, at this point, they're not creating enough good content for me to really justify the subscription every month. So
Disney Plus is like the third parent. I think is probably like most of their subscriptions. It's to sit your kid in front of it, and be done.
Yeah, we Gen Xers know all about that. Go watch TV, you know.
Yeah.
Go play some video games.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know how this plays out though. I mean, frankly, I mean, if they go after Walt, I think at this point they're going to be largely eating their own and casting aside one audience for probably another. And it's like I said on our little pilot that recorded. I think the Mandalorian and I think Cobra Kai, I think their days are numbered. I think at some point in time, the left is going to sink their teeth into these two things. And
I remember you talked about that before. I mean, I haven't seen them, but I bet you've been right on this stuff. They're going to try for sure.
Yeah, they'll try
if they let them do it.
Is Walt Disney cryogenically frozen right now, or is that someone else?
That was the rumor.
Under Tom Sawyer's Island. I mean that's always been the rumor, the urban legend is that he's cryogenically frozen, but and there's a whole city underneath Disneyland, or not a city, but there's a whole infrastructure underneath it, and that was also Walt designed it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all these tunnels and passageways.
Dude, I'd love to see that. That'd be awesome, actually.
Well, dude, nobody gets down there unless I had a friend who worked at Disneyland for about 6 months, and he was he played like Minnie or Mickey or something like that. I forget, but he was they rotated him. He hated it because it was hot and they're dicks. I mean, it's not necessarily a fun company to work for. But he said, like, even as an employee, you had to have certain clearances to get down into certain levels of Disneyland. So it's like, cool. What the fuck is really down there? You know, nobody knows. Nobody fucking knows.
Well, you have to take, I mean, if they're going to go after him for being racist, you have to take it to the end of what they've done with everyone else, from like Washington to Lincoln. Are they going to rename Disneyland? Are they going to rename Disney World? And I don't think that they're going to do that. I almost think this is just sort of like virtue signaling, just so they can continue operating however they want to operate.
Yeah, I don't think they like the brand. Like, the thing is, the percentage of people that are going to know what the new company is called is going to be less than, you know, their current base or whatever. So you are going to lose people, or you are going to lose a lot of brand equity by changing the name. And like, just, you know, it would just be a dumb thing to do, I think. Yeah,
I mean, the only thing they can do is just kind of just sort of retcon him, but I don't see them doing that because there's just way too much content on Disney Plus at this point, which is all about him, and it doesn't tear him down in any way. You know, maybe these little disclaimers that they're putting up, you know, as well, is kind of like, you know, I think it's a virtue signal, but at the same time, I also think that it's like certain things that they're going to start incorporating into creations, you know, which is largely just playing it safe and being correct, and, you know, shoehorning all this crap into entertainment, which is what the left is sort of famous for at this point. So, I don't know. I love Walt.
I think it's just insurance.
Yeah, well, that's what a lot of it is. It seems like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I'm gonna, and I think that's the way Hollywood. A lot of these actors are probably behind the scenes. They say all this crap just to cover their ass, you know. But at the same time, it's like it wouldn't surprise me if they're voting R just so they can keep more of their own money. But you're never gonna know that.
Well, Cersei said this, and he's correct. You know, Hollywood, in many cases, at this point now, is doing stuff for itself. Yeah. And the problem is, and, you know, I don't like telling people to boycott shit, but I've really limited my entertainment. Like, I don't watch the NFL anymore. I was a football player all through college, right? So, but I'm done with them. But I don't walk around going boycott the NFL. But I do look at people if they're really that offended, then don't give your money to people who tell you to go fuck yourself. Just don't do it. I mean, we know that a lot of Hollywood and a lot of these entertainment things, we know that their political stances are not the same as ours, and that's cool. I don't really care. I understand all that, but there's the line when they look at you and go, "We want you dead and eat this." Then why do you keep giving them your money? Like, right. Why do you mean, like, if these people started losing money, all of this would change. But so many people are just like basically literally mushrooms that just sit in front of the screen and go, "Oh, cool. What's on Netflix tonight?" All right, man. I'm not being judgy, but I'm letting you know that don't bitch about it anymore, because it's not going to change until you starve them out and make them realize that what they say and do has financial consequences. Because right now, the financial consequences have been very good for them to be social justice warriors, right? Because they're in collusion. We just saw this with Wall Street. Wall Street's full of shit. They don't, I mean, but now when you look at these corporations and they do all this anti-racist stuff, they don't really believe that. They're doing it because it makes them money. So, I mean, again, it's not even being angry about it. If someone tells me they hate me and want me dead, I'm just not so psyched to give them my money or my time. I mean, okay. I mean, so if I don't get to see a show, I'll be all right. If I don't get to watch the NFL, I'll be okay.
Pretty natural.
But also, I think with Hollywood, especially, so much of their success and like what the bottom line is, it's not tied to the consumers; it's tied to the funders.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
But that's who they don't want to anger.
And there's a lot of great people in Hollywood. I'm not even slagging on Hollywood in general. There's a lot of good folks out there, and it's just everything moves on if it's worth it financially for them to do it. And as long as you keep giving them your time and money, even though they spit in your face, okay, just don't complain about it. That's all.
I'm not into boycotts either. I think that's.
I like boycotts.
I like boycotts.
Supporting things and saying we want more of this.
Exactly, and
that's a good way to do it, because that's a good way to do it.
But that gets back to conservatives. You can't just bitch and moan about Hollywood, and you can't just say, okay, I'm not going to go see that. Let's create our own Hollywood. Let's create our own movies. Let's create our own graphic novels. Let's create our own animation, our own video, multimedia. We need to start providing an alternative to people. And some of us are doing that. Literally everybody here is doing that. Everybody here is a creative conservative. We're all doing something creatively to provide content as an alternative to all of the crap that's out there. And that's the most important thing. And I think that creative conservatives need to have a platform and a voice, and they need to be promoted, because the only thing that's going to keep us creating is bucks. Let's get back to the right stuff. No bucks, no Buck Rogers. No. All right. I mean, that plain and simple. I think Gus Grissom said that, maybe Deke Slayton did, but it's true. If you're not gonna support Matt and buy his book, if you're not gonna watch Hollywood Weapons, if you're not gonna buy Thump, and if you're not gonna buy Chubby Thump stickers, and if you're not gonna buy the Social Justice Warrior Handbook, none of it can get made. So I'd like to see conservatives focus more attention on us and what we do, and retweeting us, and telling all their friends about our stuff, rather than saying how much this sucks. Because I don't think you can do that forever. I mean, people just get burned out hearing how much things suck. People really want to hear something cool. Hey, this is a cool new book. This is a
right.
cool, this is awesome book.
Well, and the thing about the things that you mentioned isn't like these are things for conservatives. It's that you're not going to share necessarily, NRA's magazine, but you might be like, to your apolitical friends, you want to watch Hollywood Weapons with me.
Right. Well, it's like, dude, my buddy Doug Ernst, who writes for the Washington Examiner, he and I did this book called Soul Finder. It's a beautiful graphic novel. We crowdfunded it. It's got gorgeous full color art. It's about a group of priests who are battling supernatural demons. And when he came to me, I was like, he's kind of like, it's sort of like the A-Team, sort of like, like a team of guys who fight.
Where do I buy this? Because I need to read that.
You can get this on iconiccomics.com. Okay. And you can also get Agent Poso at iconiccomics.com. This is something else Jack and I talked about, over the last couple of years is, Jack is a huge pop culture geek. He loves comic books. I mean, he's like us. He's a 80s baby, so he grew up on largely all the same stuff that we had, cartoons, video games, movies, TV. And he was just like, dude, he's like, I want to get in the culture game. I want to create stuff. I just don't want to be a guy who's a news guy, because I love this stuff and I have a passion for it. So we crowdfunded this, and we've been selling like crazy now that we have retail copies with Iconic. So, and that's the other cool thing. Iconic Comics, great guys, fantastic, a fantastic distribution and shipping. I have found a great alternative. If, you were talking about workarounds, right? If you can't find a publisher, if you can't find a distributor, there are workarounds out there. And I kind of like the fact that conservatives are sort of like, improvise, adapt, overcome. But at the same time, if we had more infrastructure, it wouldn't be an issue, frankly. Well,
you'd spend less time having to adapt, improvise, and overcome, and just create what you're doing.
Exactly, and that's really all we need to be doing. Is just focusing on creation, and also putting. One of the things I love to do is put creative conservatives to work. All the artists on this book are all right of center. It's the same with Trump Space Force, which was also a big seller. You can get this at Antarctic Press.
And Rooney was in that. And Rooney was in that book. Thank you very much.
Well, Terry's in here too, and he's got hair. It's really amazing.
And two good arms.
We made him even.
Dude, I hate you. I hate you. Lisa.
More handsome than he already is. Look at that.
Let me lighten up.
Dude, I mean, he's got all kinds of great one-liners. It's fantastic. This is so much fun.
I love that. I showed my parents that when I got it. I was like, look at me.
I'm in there too.
Yeah,
baby, I know you are.
But I look better now than I did then.
It's amazing. I mean, there's tons of we put all kinds of people in here, all kinds of cameos.
Yeah, no,
It was a
dude,
lot of fun.
no, Brett, it's actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I dig
Gorka.
that stuff that you're doing. I think you're doing great work. I mean, it's really good, and it's so. I don't know. Good, keep going, and hopefully,
Yeah.
like we were talking about. You know, I actually got to punch out here in a minute, but
No sweat.
but we've talked about it last time and this time too. I just do hope you can bitch about it all day, you can cry about it all day, you can do the workaround all day, or hopefully someone with enough vision and mostly money and not give a damnness can just step in and go, this is where you bring it. And as Lisa said, doesn't have to. I don't want conservative culture. I don't want stuff that has to be. I mean, I'm Catholic, I'm conservative, but I don't have to watch things that are that. It just has to be good.
Right. I mean,
that's
dude, you don't walk out of like Conan the Barbarian thinking like that guy's got a bunch of liberal views. It's
exactly. I don't care about that.
But he just lives it, right? And the characters don't. That's the problem with the left is they shoehorn all this stuff into the movies.
Man, it's dumb. It's
dumb, and it's all forced, and it kills the suspension of disbelief, and you're just kind of like, oh, this is lame.
And I think also if someone cracked that shit open, they would go, "Oh man, we're missing a big market. Like we could actually even make more money than we're doing right now."
Well, dude, that's what
talks to them. That's what
everybody here has a product to sell, and there's 75 million people that could potentially buy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. I mean, that is the vacuum that all of us here can fill by creating content. So anyway, we'll wrap it up so everybody can get out of here. Let's see, Matt. Where can people find your book? What do you got going on?
Well, I was going to say Amazon. It was supposed to come out on the 2nd. It was originally supposed to come out January 11th. Mm-hmm. Push it back to the 18th, and then back to February 2nd, and now it's back to February 23rd.
Dude,
why are they moving it around?
So it's probably nothing sinister. It's probably just an issue of there's like at least I'm told there's a shortage in the number of like book printers right now relative to demand. So that actually would make sense. So I don't know when that's going to be out. But the Kindle they already released early because of that. And then the audiobook's out. I think Kindle's probably the best version to read it then.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, a bunch of printers went out. One of my printers that I used went out of business with COVID. Dude, and they've been around for like almost 90 years.
Damn.
Yeah, it sucks. And they printed a lot of comics. That's the thing. So fortunately, we found another great printer to work with. But Lisa, what do you got going on, and where can people find you? And Matt, what's your Twitter, real quick?
I think it's Matt Palumbo 12, right?
Okay, sorry.
They can find me on Twitter at Lisa DEP, and all my many books on Amazon. And what else? GetBrightEmail.com, which is a daily email. Speaking of culture, one thing that's sort of left out, especially in this conversation or in this show, is culture for women, because we are inundated with women's media that's liberal. And so I have GetBrightEmail.com, which helps educate conservatives on culture stuff and takes out the liberal narrative on political stuff. And that's also one of the things that I tried to do with two of my books, is to bring this message to women and not just men, even though I love you.
Hey, I've considering that most suburban white women turned out for Biden, I would say that America doesn't have a problem with Trump. America has a problem with white suburban women at this point.
My next project is repeal the 19th Amendment.
All gold. Oh, you minx!
I'm so glad she said that and not me.
You minx.
So maybe the next show we need to talk about, was the suffrage movement a mistake?
Is it really a debate? How long would that last?
Oh God, Palumbo! Oh my God!
I'm just kidding. Allegedly.
Terry, where can people find you?
I'm nobody, man. You'll find me on Twitter. I'll put out my cool TV stuff, some good news later on as that develops. Gotcha. I'm just sitting here taking care of this old dog right there. Larry.
He moved.
He's got one leg hanging off.
He flipped around. He adjusted. So
yeah, that's the worst.
Dude, that is a very happy dog. Let me tell you something.
All he is my friend. We just lay around and talk to each other. Yes, he talks to me. Yes, he does.
I know what that's like. I know exactly what that's like. All right. Well, that's it for this episode of
Good to
Political
see you guys.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, man. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Terry, Lisa, Matt. We'll do this again. Please like and share this video far and wide. Subscribe to Political Punks and hit the bell for notifications so you never miss an episode. Stay frosty, and we will see you next time.